I didn't hear no bell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails. Guys, we've got Fatal on with us today. He is the king of mechanics in this game. He knows all the theory craft, all the things. He comes up with the most ridiculously tough teams to beat and cracks those same teams. Really impressive stuff, and we're doing faction essentials with him for the foreseeable future. So that being said, Fatal, thank you so much for joining me today, man. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is maybe depending on how you enjoy this, let us know how you feel. Maybe that future will become a little bit more foreseeable. But yeah, I think we've got some good stuff to say. I think we've got a lot of stuff, good stuff to cover for sure.
Absolutely. And so we're gonna start with something relatively tame in terms of just there's a lot of really crazy teams out there, and one of the teams that is still relevant to this day is Nightsisters. We want to talk about them a little bit. We're doing, again, folks, this is faction essentials, so we're not going to talk about every single element of the entire faction. We've established, after me and Fatal have talked about this faction for hours, we've discovered, honestly, man, like, you could talk for an hour, I could talk for an hour, and there'd still probably be stuff we missed.
You wouldn't think it for Nightsisters, especially when we chose it the first topic. I was like, what even is there to say? And here we are. Too much to say.
Too much. There really is. So we're gonna the way it's gonna work, folks, is we're going to talk about the underlying factors of how this team works and how to set it up on this channel, and then we're going to be linking in the video description Fatal's website, the Playbook, on YouTube as well. He's going to then we'll have a video on actual gameplay mechanics and how to use the team. So how to build it and the reasons it works, and then how to actually use it. So that's the plan anyways. So check out the video description. We'll post them at the same time. We'll do like the synchronized watches thing. Like, yeah. Except I don't have a watch. I need to get one.
Reset the clock.
Yeah. So that being said, Fatal, why should people even build Nightsisters these days? Like, what's the pull? Because they're I really enjoy them, but they're not fan favorites these days.
Yeah, you look at their positioning in the meta, and they're barely in at the bottom, at least if we're talking competitive. But really, regardless of where you are in the game, they're kind of like the team in their fights. It's a little bit hard to get rid of them, right? They keep on showing up, you use them in multiple game modes. For younger players, they're pretty scrappy even at low gear. And yeah, assault battles, raids, even conquests, you can't get rid of them, man.
Yeah, they're super obnoxious, man, in a lot of different ways. I think if there's one team that has given CG the most headaches, it must be Nightsisters, just because of the zombie and DACA everything interaction. It's too good for certain parts of the game in some ways.
Yeah, it's that's why they're still around, right? They can provide certain things that other teams just cannot compete with. They are the only truly unkillable tank in the game still, and yeah, there's a lot to like there, even now.
Yeah, the zombie literally respawns before the Rancor gets her to his mouth. So, not to mention that they provide a great opportunity to burn witches. So there is also that. Now, I mean, I love that they can do big comebacks. I love that they can punch way above their station a lot of times. They're not going to get great banners in GAC, but we're going to focus GAC today for the most part. You guys can learn all the other stuff from other videos on how to use them in other game modes. But like the basic, we kind of boiled it down, Fatal, into three different main components of Nightsisters. The first of which is like leveraging death for advantage. Death as in your guys die and then they're revived quite a bit, quite often. What's the second most vital part of the framework that's comprised with Nightsisters? That sounds super mechanical, but
Oh, you're good. Yeah, so you have a team that's already surprisingly comfortable with dying. I would say probably most comfortable in the game for the most part with losing a character, but that doesn't really matter too much if you aren't backing it up behind it, right? So you start to get these control tools. Plague is literally unique to this faction, and it means that any stuns that you land, this team has lots and lots of stuns to offer, will stick at least until the opposing team can heal it off, and not every team comes with a heal. So sometimes that plague is just there to stay, and the stuns alongside him.
Absolutely. And then finally, they're just leveraging turn meter and heals and revives, guys. I mean, they're at the really basic level. They just heal a lot. They gain a lot of turn meter, so they take a ton of turns, and then they don't die easily, except to certain things, which you should absolutely avoid, such as daze, which is so scary, and now everyone's got AoE daze, it feels like.
I remember when we got it for the first time, and it was like a shocker. Like, they did what now? And these days, it's like, yeah, we know. Oh, great, another one, fantastic. Yeah, that's a quick way to shut down the Nightsisters engine. Whether you're using them or playing against them, they start to feel real sad real quick. Daka goes from a pillar of the team to just on vacation. And yeah, right there alongside with Daze as well is Shock, which is custom build, if you could explain just how horrific that one debuff is for that team.
Gosh, yeah, it's super rough because they rely on heals, not the. So Shock will allow protection recovery, but it won't allow health recovery. And Nightsisters, like I said, they're not going to get great banners because they don't have any protection revive. Or like sometimes Spirit will get some protection banners just because no one can hit her through the foresight. But otherwise, like really, you're relying on them being able to heal. And Shock stops healing, and then the other key piece of them is turn meter and being able to take a ton of turns, and Shock also blocks that. And so Shock is like the custom built FU to Nightsisters, in my opinion. Like it's kind of fun. I mean, I don't think the devs did anything like you know what, screw Nightsisters, but that's what the impact was. Nightsisters were like, no, don't do that.
I mean, at this point, anything is possible, right? There's got to be some Nightsister crunches going on in the team.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Otherwise, yeah, like so like. And Shock covers the healing immunity. Any kind of debuff that prevents them from healing is catastrophic. And then finally, revive block. I mean, they rely on revive so much. Nightsister Zombie doesn't care, but the others are like, please let us revive. We want to come back.
Yeah, it's their entire basis for anything. If they can't come back, they have no team.
Right, well, and that's the thing. Like, they die super easy so that they can be revived, and so if they have days and they can't actually take turns, like it's just them like standing there getting punched, and they don't prefer that.
Yep.
So, all right, real quick, we've got two real leads. Daka can be a third lead in a crunch, and Ahsoka is not even an option, but. Talzin and Asajj. Now, which one? I mean, you and I talked about this for a while. Like, they both got decent leads. Which one is, in your opinion, like, which one is the better overall lead?
Yeah, Asajj kind of forms a niche sort of defensive concept. It gives the team a little bit more like reactive turn meter. But mostly, if you think Nightsisters, I think most players will immediately think of Talzin lead. The identity of the faction is so based around revives, and Talzin, takes, the basic, which is this team has some pretty decent basics. There's a lot of stunning on basics, which is fantastic, but it also turns that into an automatic revive move, which is so important for this team to, again, keep accelerating itself, keep gaining more value, keep putting pressure on. Talzin really is just kind of the engine that ties this team together.
Yeah, I think so. And she's got one really key piece of her leadership, and that is the potency that she gives. I mean, a lot of different key things, but Asajj gives a lot of offense boosts, some turn meter stuff, but Talzin gives 50% potency, which if you look at all the stuns and the plague and everything that's involved, like, you can't get that from relics. Asajj, at least you could mod well for offense. It kind of a little bit replace it, but I think Talzin lead is probably going to edge Asajj out for the most part. Now, real quick, which zetas would you say are absolutely vital, and which ones would you say you can kind of skip on a Nightsisters team, Fatal?
Sure. So Talzin is just this kind of come as you are, whether your team is extremely well geared or poorly geared. The Nightsisters really just kind of need Talzin lead to start to make sense in a lot of respects. So I think Talzin lead first is plenty solid as the first choice. And as your DACA starts to get nicer, maybe you're getting, I think we said around like gear 12 is probably best for starting to think about this. DACA is the lifeboat for the team. Everyone else around her is dead, and she keeps on getting more Terminator to take extra turns as people die, and she will bring them back with the revive. If your DACA does not have that stacking health, she just won't be that much more remarkably tanky than other people, that it becomes a lot easier for her to just get killed off. So I think, once you start thinking about gearing your DACA a little bit, I think it's definitely worth giving this Zeta a consideration as well. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the other ones, you probably want Talzin's eventually, her second one, but I think the other key one is probably the Asajj unique. I don't know. It's in a lot of ways it makes it does. There's a lot of different really good things that it does. Like, she's ramping up her damage as things go along.
Yeah, so especially with the guaranteed Terminator, right? It's, Galaxy of Heroes has plenty of randomness in the game, but we see baseline when an ally dies, she's most of the time not going to be getting Terminator. We take this Zeta, we turn it into a guaranteed consistent gain, and Asajj and DACA are two peas in a pod. Anytime a teammate is dying, they are having a blast. And this Zeta kind of helps cement that identity as Asajj having a vested interest in being, let's call them two of the Death Sisters, right? Talzin, is just kind of off on the side watching for people to, get hurt. But Asajj and DACA are really the ones who are kind of counting bodies and really just getting in there anytime any sort of action is happening to either team.
Right, yeah, those are the two you want to stay alive. Obviously, Zombie has to stay alive, but it's kind of sad when you're cheering for your own characters to die, but that's really the essential thing. I'm like, yes, another Spirit death, this is
Yeah.
great. And really, Spirit hits so hard, you can actually just send her, like, if she's dead, it's kind of nice to actually just leverage the Mother Talzin lead to be able to just have her assist every time with basics.
Oh yeah, that is the best moment of this team. If you can get the right two characters to die, it is some of the most fun gameplay in this game you can find, I think.
It really is, yeah. It's a lot of fun. Everything, they seem to be spinning it on all cylinders when you can do that. So, real quick, teams that they can beat. Like, sometimes you're gonna do something more mundane, like against Geonosians they'll beat. But they also, like we said before, they can punch way above their weight. I mean, I don't think anyone would consider a Nightsisters team to be the equal of equal value to Commander Luke, but they absolutely can beat Commander Luke. Not all the time, not consistently, but just a few other teams they can beat as well. What other teams, Fatal, just in general, can they beat?
Yeah, so their most common wheelhouse, I would say, is General Grievous. I think is probably the most common counter they're known for these days. There are, it depends on the version of Grievous, right? BB-8 and Droideka is maybe more appealing for them. Newt, things start to get pretty sweaty, and then Watt is a ticking time bomb. We generally try to avoid sisters against Watts.
Desperation mode, if you want to try that. Yeah. They'll beat all kinds of things though. Like, I beat Darth Revan teams. Like, sometimes you can do these like Nightsisters zombie lead. We don't need to talk about that. It's a mess. But Jedi Revan, Treya. You guys will see it more on our video over on Fatal's channel. But that being said, let's go for 1 minute modding on each of these characters if we can, just because we all need to talk about them. Asajj needs what, Fatal?
I would say, if you look at her Rampage unique and you look at what she's gaining very, very often in this team, right? She is stacking lots of crit chance, lots of offense, lots of health, and she also gets a lot of solid speed with her unique, right? So I think the generally best way to build her is going to be around those stats that you're ramping. Crit damage is pretty comfortable for her just because, she has very quickly one of the highest crit chance collections in the game. She gets a few team deaths under her belt and she's in a pretty happy spot. We see a defense set here. If you show them the triangle, will probably make sense pretty quickly as to why. But I think on average, unless you have a triangle as possibly crazy as this one, I think, would you agree, like, house set is probably a solid bet here?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. The defense thing. I mean, if you can match a set with a crazy mod like this, that this is almost like custom built for Assad, other than a saying defense set. I think this is a pretty good. Health is probably the one you want for her. Next up, we have Mother Talzin. What do you want for her?
Yeah, so Mother Talzin has some pretty simple desires with a couple of choices you can make if you want to get fancy. Mostly, you're just looking for offense. She is a special damage dealer and has very, very, very low crit chance. So if you're considering some sort of crit build, you have to invest crazy amounts of effort into your mods to try to get any amount of decent crit consistency. It is fun to do if you're posting sisters on defense. It's not the worst idea, but it's the way Nightsisters tend to get answers these days. It's a lot of effort for what's probably not going to matter. Potency as well, especially if you're trying to stay flexible on your lead. As we mentioned, if you do decide to go Asajj lead suddenly, your Talzin needs all the potency help that she can get, right? That plus 50% is very, very easy to forget very quickly that Talzin does a lot of carrying for you on that stat. And if you're doing sisters against Grievous, you might think, we're getting a lot of free potency. Why do we need more? B1, all that extra tenacity, you cannot afford to skimp on potency here. Definitely worth keeping in mind.
Yep, absolutely agree. Now, in terms of her speed, it's nice to have her fast, but you want to have her hit hard because if you get her unique, she is gaining a lot of turn meter just based off of that. So her speed isn't necessarily reflected here, not to mention she's handing herself 30 speed along with everyone else with her leadership. Now, the next one, Daka. There's an argument to be had to put some defense sets on her, some potency, whatever. I've found that putting mostly full health sets is probably going to be the most bang for your buck, just because it interacts with that unique zeta of hers. But what are your thoughts, Fatal?
Yeah, I think pretty standard Daka is 3 health set, 4 health primary. You can just kind of set it and forget it, and for the most part, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think, at times there is something to be said for like a little bit of speed on Daka, right? Like, even though she gains so much in turn meter, I do still think like in some matchups like Grievous, sometimes she will have to claw her way out. I think that that's pretty niche overall. I think, don't overthink it too much. Cram on health. Defense as a stat is not bad. And if you're going sisters on defense, I do think a crit avoid arrow actually could adds add a little bit of spice there, right? She's got crit avoid on the mastery. If you're giving her relic levels as well, that can combine to make a surprisingly bulky Daka.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's one of the characters that I always advise people, like, don't go cheap on her relics. Like, don't just go relic 0, relic 1. Like, relic 3 to 5 is probably the sweet spot for her in general. If you want to take down these big teams anyways. Now, Nightsisters Zombie, she dies a lot, but she can also, if she lives long enough, she can actually grow to be super duper fast. What do you want with her? Do you want her thick? Do you want her fast? What do you think?
I think that there are 2 main roads, and I don't think either road is particularly wrong. It mostly comes down to what you have available to budget and kind of what you're interested in. I do think some amount of speed, you don't necessarily just want to cram on tank mods that are all bulk stats. Having a zombie that can live now is not bad, right? As you mentioned, every turn that zombie takes where it took damage but lived, you get 50% speed, which is huge returns. I think this is legitimately one of the fastest characters we have in the game, right? So any speed you give them can quite literally double itself. But at the same time, you only get to keep that speed if they stay alive. So this isn't to say, build a turbo zombie and everything's going to work out great, right? It needs to be able to take the hits as well. It can't get protection back, so health and defense are definitely going to be the ways to go here. If you can sneak in a speed set, I don't think it's the worst idea. But this 220 to 250 speed range is kind of what I'd like to aim for.
Yeah, absolutely. And mine is a little slow, but I'm also fine with her dying quite a bit. So
she does her job at 220 just fine.
Yeah, there's also a school of thought, guys, and this is, so if you want her to have relics, it's fine. You can also just put her at gear 10. That's where she needs to be. She has to be gear 10 at least. But once she gets that unique Omega, I believe is what it is, then she becomes unkillable until all the Nightsisters on her team die. And at gear 10, it's kind of nice because the AI just likes to target her for no reason, and so she'll just keep dying and dying, feeding the team turn meter for no apparent reason. The AI just loves to kill her, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, they've got a solid contract, those two.
Yeah, absolutely. The AI is like, yeah, I'll hook you up with some deaths. Now, finally, we have Nightsisters Spirit, which I just think it's funny. People didn't realize how good she was for a long time. They just assumed that Talia was going to be the one you used all the time. But Nightsisters Spirit, what are your thoughts?
So Nightsisters Spirit has the fabled defense ignore. The illegal, banned from the game, but Spirit still keeping it around has some real insane damage to throw around if you give her the opportunity. So I do think crit damage, possibly an offense set or a crit damage set depending on what your mod collection can sustain. Her crit chance values for physical aren't amazing, so if you do decide to go a crit damage set, I would try to make sure that you at least have some backing crit chance behind that to make the best usage of it. But yeah, she's really just kind of a solid dedicated damage dealer with a pretty nice base speed. And you really, if you can get her up to the kind of 270s, 280s range, you get the 30 from the lead. That puts her up to like 300 and 310 without really, breaking the bank too hard, right? She gets you a pretty decently fast character here.
Yep, absolutely. And I will say, guys, I noticed a huge difference when I went from speed set on her to actual offense or crit damage set. It is a massive change. She starts just destroying people. It's really fun.
Absolutely.
So, that being said, I think we're done with this segment. We're going to jump over to Fatal's video, guys. I'm going to try to link it here. Hopefully there's just a link like over someone's face at this point. But if there's not, go to the video description. Check out Fatal's video. I'll be there too. Fatal, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. This has been fun.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.